Peter, how are you tonight, sir?
I'm very well, Michael. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for asking. Is this your first radio appearance since you made the film?
Absolutely. It's my first radio appearance.
Excellent.
History.
Great. Awesome. Well, first off, I just want to make this clear. I am saying the name of the film right. Correct? It's Zeitgeist, correct?
That's correct. It's a German word, Zeitgeist, which means essentially the spirit of the age or the spirit of society. There's a few different definitions, but ultimately the definition that I subscribe to is the insight of a culture. It's the general spiritual nature and awareness of a culture. If you look it up, you find many different definitions for it. But
all right.
That's essentially the definition.
I got to tell you, it's I watched this film probably about a week after it came out, and I was just completely blown away by it. It said
well, I hope you know there's a new version up now. Right. That was put up about 2 days ago. That is actually the finalized version. It's a little bit different now, just so you know.
Excellent. Yes, and I was going to bring that up as well. I haven't gotten the chance to view it yet, but I will get into that in just a few minutes here. But I just want to just say what a great film it is. It's excellent. It gave me a lot of insight, especially into the Christianity portion that I wasn't aware of. Some of it I did know, but a lot of it I didn't. So it has obviously probably created you personally a lot of controversy. You had told me over the email that you've been receiving a ton of emails about it. What kind of responses are you getting from this film?
Well, it's been exponentially increasing. In fact, right before I came on the show, I was looking at my emails, and I get about 7 to 10 an hour right now, and I'm laughing because I don't know how I'm going to possibly answer all of these, and I'm definitely going to try. Hopefully things will slow down. But they're terrific emails. 99.9% of them are absolutely positive. It's people that really want to see change in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that 40% of them literally are people that say outright, what can I do to help? People offering donations, people wanting to create rallies, everybody wants to show it to their friends, they want to have community and organizations to do things. You know, it's a really amazing thing to see the response, which proves to me that there really is, and I'm sure you know this as well, a massive movement in this country and in the world to see truth come out and to stop all the horrific lies that circulate in society that do nothing but detract from our human unity.
Exactly. Now, I just want to let you know that your film helped me lose sleep, but not in a bad way. I'll tell you why. Because when I first found it, it took me a couple days before I got around to watching it. But I started watching it around 2 or 3 in the morning one night, and I'm saying to myself, and because I normally get up at 9 in the morning and start researching for my show and taking care of my kids and all that, and then it's about 3 in the morning. Mike Chambers' show is about to go off the air, and I'm like, I think I want to watch this. But I told myself, okay, I'm only going to watch a half an hour, and I'll watch the rest later. I watched a half an hour into that film, Peter, and I was just completely mesmerized by it. I just said, you know what? I don't care. I'll get 2 hours of sleep. I really don't care. I'm staying up. I'm watching the whole thing. It was literally that mesmerizing. I was completely blown away by it because, and I'll tell you why. Now, the 9/11, and for folks who are not familiar with this film, basically, Peter here, he has covered the Christianity, I guess you could say, scandal. In the first part, it's 3 parts. The second part is 9/11 Truth, and then the third part covers the Federal Reserve, which I thought was a brilliant, brilliant piece. But
thank you. That's probably the most important section.
Yeah, it is. It really is. It's very important because a lot of people don't understand the Federal Reserve, and you cut it down. I mean, you took pretty much. I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen the film Money Masters, but that's like over that's over a 3.5 hour film.
3 hours. Yeah.
Yeah, and you combined that, you compacted that in about like 30 to 40 minutes into one section of your film. Now, going back to the response you're getting, are you getting a lot of negativity about the Christianity part of your film?
Actually, I have. I've gotten a few, but honestly, I mean a few out of the probably 700 to 800 emails I've gotten in 2.5 weeks, I guess.
Right.
The negativity towards that, I mean, it's basically the same arguments. Unfortunately, with the Christian section, it's the most esoteric because you cannot go online and find this information out. So a lot of people, they see this stuff and they say, oh, well, I see all the copycat deities, and they go and they punch it up and they can't find the information. That's because the information is not there to be found on the internet or in encyclopedias. You have to turn to the scholars that have been studying these things for at least the past 400 to 500 years.
Right.
And these texts have been suppressed. The primary core of that argument comes from a man named Gerald Macy, who derived his Egyptology work off from a man named Samuel Birch. I think it's very important I mention Gerald Macy.
Right.
Because he is probably the preeminent Egyptologist researcher in comparative religion, specifically the Egyptian religion versus the Christian religion. And when people understood how unbelievably similar these stories are and where the derivatives come from for this religion, and in fact the Judaism aspect of it, and even to the Islamic aspect of it, because they're all the same thing. They're all derived from the same type of idea.
Right.
People would really wake up. Unfortunately, it's such a point of contention that people, it's just like the 9/11, just like if you remember the film, I have David Ray Griffin introduce the 9/11 section.
Right.
Which he's such a brilliant guy.
Right, and I had him on my show. Yeah, I had David Ray on my show about 2-3 nights ago, but it was. Right,
I heard a fraction of that. It was great.
Excellent, thank you.
But he does this excellent comparison of this belief, this sort of a religious myth where it's blasphemous to question it. And that's the state of mentality you have with 9/11. You have these, the American nationalists who just simply can't take in new information. It's too emotionally trying for them to take in new information about just for the possibility that the government could be behind something so atrocious.
Right.
Unfortunately, there's a massive precedent for it, but that's a different point. So that is, the emails that I've gotten that reflect this. I've tried to be as courteous as possible. Most of them are not, outright, hate-filled. They just say I'm wrong, and they give me all their web sources, and I respond. I give them all my books and resources, and most of them don't seem like they're going to pursue it anymore. They just continue arguing. But what are you going to do,
Yeah, exactly. And there's not a whole...
I don't know how far you want to elaborate on that point regarding Christianity, but I'd be happy to do so.
Right.
Of course, the piece covers most of it. Mm-hmm. Just so you know, this isn't all of my, conception as far as the compilation of it. I actually had a professional in this field consult with me on that particular section, a woman named Acharya S. She has 3 tremendous books that I recommend everyone to read. She's probably the foremost contemporary on the subject of Christianity and the actual astrotheological sources for the religion itself,
right?
Which no one has been aware of. They don't realize. I mean, back in the day, people didn't have television. They looked at the sky. Yeah. The sky was all they had, and they were able to extract incredible amounts of information over long periods of time. 26,000-year cycles they could track and communicate to generation after generation. And people think that the ancients were unintelligent, but that's absolutely not true. The ancients are incredibly intelligent. In fact, your point about the emails, overall they've been absolutely positive. Even the people that hated the first part love the other part. So it's really great that I get a combination of people, They say, this is nonsense, but I really like this. At least they're being exposed to these points,
Exactly. And I think it's important that if you put so much faith into something that you heavily examine it first before you put all your faith into it. But I think one huge part that blew me away about that movie, and you might want to elaborate a little on this, was just the amount of different gods and goddesses and supposed saviors of mankind that all share that December 25th birthday, all born of a virgin mother, all had the 12 disciples. It was incredible. I mean, all throughout history, going back 5,000 plus years of the same exact thing. Yeah, and then how you showed where we're entering different ages. We're in the age of Pisces now, and we'll be moving into the age of Aquarius. And I found that absolutely fascinating. And then there's another point that I thought was pretty cool. And my wife exposed me to this when I first met her, but she wasn't even completely aware of this. But there's how you say there were over 40 plus scholars back then during Christ's time who not once wrote anything about him in any of their books. Now, my wife said that there was one, and she couldn't remember the name, but he wrote maybe a line.
Josephus, probably.
Yeah, and
Josephus?
I'm not sure. I have to ask her again, but
okay. Well, I want to bring this up. First of all, the new version, I've corrected that list. I've readjusted that section slightly that you're talking about because I got a lot of heat for that one because everyone would cite all these supposed historians that would say that Jesus existed. So I expanded that, and basically what I did is I listed what is now about 30 historians that say nothing, and these are ones that are absolutely accurate. The first list I had was from an older source, and Acharya S, who I just spoke of, who's been studying this for many, many years, and absolutely an expert on this, which I highly recommend people look into her work.
Right.
She gave me an updated list, which is slightly smaller, removing the four people that supposedly, and that people claim, reference Christ. And I'll tell you exactly what those are. You have Tacitus, Pliny the Younger, and Suetonius. And essentially these three have 1 to 2 sentences in all the mass, all the body, all the volumes of work regarding the history of that period. And all they refer to is the Christ or the Christos. Now, if you know anything about entomology, you realize that Christ and Christos they're not names, they're titles. They refer to and they mean the anointed one, which can be applied to anything. It's a title. Pharaohs, as you know, pharaohs and kings, I'm sure you know, were considered to be connected to God, always. They were representations of God. They were the anointed ones.
Right.
Anybody could be considered an anointed one if they are praised as such. It simply means just that. So these references to Christos and Christ have absolutely no relationship whatsoever to Jesus. They try to twist it around because there are references to Christians, which could be anything, because at this point you have the Gnostic Christianity, which existed before supposedly Jesus even came. It's an unbelievable amount of evidence that supports that these lines are taken completely out of context, and the context of them are absolutely ambiguous.
Right.
And this is Josephus. And let me point out Josephus. He wrote one paragraph that was extremely Christian. He was a Jewish historian, and his one paragraph, which exists in, I believe, a 10-volume work, his one paragraph actually said, we had the Jesus who was praised by such and such, who died and rose again. He performed all of these miracles, basically following the pagan ripoff of the Christian doctrine, which all of his aspects are pagan, by the way.
Exactly. Now,
he did say Jesus, and that's the one thing. He did say Jesus. However, that has been completely and utterly debunked because that part did not appear in his books, his volumes, for about 200 years after he wrote them. And I could go on a number of different points on this, but what it comes down to is a translator, I believe it was Eusebius, I can't remember his exact pronunciation, but anyway, he was noted to be the first that found this one paragraph in this huge, massive work, and it just came out of nowhere. And you have all these other historians, such as Justin Martyr, who I even quote in my piece, who lived about 80 years or so after the death of Christ. And he read all of Josephus' work, didn't see or reference this paragraph once, along with other Christian historians. None of them cite them in their works as well. So it's been noted, and there's other reasons as well to support this claim, but it's basically a complete forgery. And that's it. Even if it wasn't a forgery, what do we have here? We have one paragraph supporting the most incredible life of the most influential man who rose from the dead, blacked out the sun, caused earthquakes. He not only performed tons of miracles, everyone could see him rise. I mean, there's in the Bible, there's at least 12 different notions of him being praised by the masses, being known far and wide. There's nothing there. There's nothing there. And it's really difficult for Christians to think about that and to really look at the archaeological or lack of archaeological evidence and to realize that the Christian church, who ruled all of Europe for 1,500 years, destroying everything they could that could ever counter the belief in the historized Christ. I mean, I don't want to rattle on about all of this, but the point is that once you look at the astrotheological basis for Christianity, once you look at all of the stories attributed to Jesus that are absolutely taken outright, plagiarized from pre-Christian gods, and then you look at the lack of archaeological evidence, the lack of historian documentation, you just have to wonder, where is this guy?
Right. Now, going back to, to paganism, I always thought this was interesting, and I don't know why more people don't catch on to this, I guess, for lack of a better term, but the fact of all these symbols, like, for instance, the swastika and the pentagram, are all pagan symbols. I mean, the pentagram was the symbol of the Venus, goddess Venus, and it stands for earth, air, fire, water, and spirit, and it's actually not an evil symbol of Satan. It's a symbol of basically life and happiness and love, and that's what they've taken out of context. And actually, the Catholics started all that stuff, and they to demonize the pagan religion. And I always thought that was amazing how so many people, Christians especially, they demonize that symbol, and it's truly not a demonic symbol. It's actually a symbol of love.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And little do they know that the majority of symbols that they throw around are pagan symbols as well. They are not informed of that. They have no idea that the cross is derived from the cross of the zodiac. It's not a crucifixion element. In fact, the entire idea of crucifixion is an abstraction. It's a cruciform. There's numerous deities that are seen in this form with their arms outstretched. The parallels and the combinations go on and on. It's truly fascinating. It takes a lot of research to understand this. And when I first looked into this, I was kind of skeptical in general. I never had an interest in Christianity or religion in general. I always felt that it's very structural, was essentially racist and elitist, and I still believe that today. I don't like to title myself as an atheist or a humanist. In fact, I don't really think that we need these words at all.
Right.
It's sort of like someone who believes in something they just made up, and they expect somebody else to take a counterposition to it just because that one person made it up. We live in this kind of zeitgeist where people just assume this kind of form of duality, where it's all good versus evil, and basically you have this mentality generated by, and this is different from my previous topic, Christianity and all of these theistic belief systems essentially is an underlying current of good versus evil. And I can't figure out where this came from. I mean, you cannot possibly be that black and white about things, right? In the 9/11 truth movement, for example, there's some absolutely great Christian sects, and they're great work, and I don't put any of these people down. I put people down in general. I wish people would think more about what they believe in.
Exactly.
But there's this idea that it's good versus evil, that Bush and Kissinger and Cheney, these guys are some manifestation of evil.
Right.
It's so ludicrous because what they're doing, and if you remember, I end the piece with divide and conquer. That's one of the major mottos of the people in power. They want to divide the culture. And they use religion, in a sense. Religion has kind of made a life of its own as far as the division. It's a self-perpetuating type of anomaly. But they divide and conquer. That's what they do in Iraq. They're dividing us with religious sects there. They go to war with each other. They divide up the people here through all sorts of interesting means, through fashion, through everything they can think of. The division, it's terrible. And the religion itself is a seed. It is a seed of this divisionary ideology. Even people that aren't Christian still end up in this idea of right versus wrong, good versus evil, black versus white. You can extrapolate this into a form of racism that goes on and on and on. And it's absolutely pointless.
Right.
It's completely wrong and unfounded.
Yeah.
The moment that someone says it's good versus evil, they have fallen into the trap. I have a very difficult time these days listening to Alex Jones, which whom I love, by the way. He's a terrific guy.
I'm totally with you.
I wouldn't have the knowledge that I have without Alex. He's fantastic. He's really out there trying to help people.
Right.
I can't handle listening to him talk about this idea of good versus evil, where he believes he's in a battle, that he's fighting some force. And I literally heard him say that.
Yeah.
He's his own person, so I'm not going to say that everyone thinks that way, but it seems to be this underlying Christian, religious, theistic, my God, better than yours, or a good versus evil idea, and they're falling into the trap. You can only go so far in essentially the unification of mankind when you entertain the idea that it's a good versus evil, black and white distinction, because when it comes down to it, we have to strive for unity, and it's the individuals that are creating these atrocious crimes, they aren't some manifestation of the opposite of you. They are a manifestation of you, just in a very poor sense.
Right.
If you know what I mean by that.
No, I totally.
I wish we would break away from that. I'm really appalled by that. And
exactly. And if people think about it, I mean, this is why we're at war right now, is because of religion. And, as soon as 9/11 happened, you have the Bush administration basically demonizing the Muslim religion, and now it becomes a battle of Christian versus Muslim, and now you've got Christians invading a country ruled by the Muslim religion. They've been battling each other for thousands of years, and they're trying to settle their score, and it's the the game. I mean, everybody knows who's tuned in tonight what's going on over there. So basically, I want to move on here. I want to get into the 9/11 part of your film, and then we'll get into the Federal Reserve. What is it was just a brilliantly put together piece on 9/11. You didn't narrate that part. You let the words and the stories and the clips from the mainstream media tell it all, and the clips from some of Alex's films and from Loose Change, and I thought that was great. And it's great how you put it together. You didn't have to narrate it. People just they were forced to read it and forced to look at it without having to turn away and just listen to you. They were forced to watch it, and I thought that was a great tactic you used. Tell us. What is the one, if you can pick one, what is the biggest smoking gun to you about 9/11 that points to an inside job?
Well, the most obvious is WPC7. It's right there in plain view. So obvious. New information keeps coming out about it. You have to really be blind. And it just goes to show how people filter information, because you look at it, and if you have any intuition whatsoever, there's just no way that structure could collapse in the fashion that it does.
Right.
It's in free fall speed that it's so transparent. Now we have this new testimony by a man that was in there. I think you probably heard of this, who was in there and an explosion went off.
Right.
You have all the other firefighters and police officers saying, "Get back! Seven's going to come down, or Seven's going to explode." You have that big, huge explosion that you hear on that one video, that HBO cutout.
Yep.
Where the guys are standing there at the payphone, thermite underneath it, and not to mention the cover-up of it. You didn't see that thing shown anywhere.
Exactly. If I could cut you off here real quick, I'd like to take a call here. We have a call coming through on the toll-free line. Revolution Radio, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's Luger calling. My nightly call. I didn't see Zeitgeist. I haven't seen the new, the updated version. I think it's an excellent movie. I think I've been showing people up here in Canada, but your film, I've been showing people that are skeptical of other information. It's totally blown them away. I have a couple questions, sorry. The first question, I hate to dip back in the Christianity aspect, but I was exposed to an idea in a book called The Hero Key, that Jesus was like a part of a breakaway sect called the Essenes. There are bits and pieces in our constructed New Testament where they kind of pick and chose and twisted things. And that there was a guy named the Christ, and it was kind of like he was like a Davidic king, but he wasn't like a king of kings. He united the kingly and priestly pillar. And I was going to get your thoughts on that. And also, my other question, actually, I think you answered my other question. So that's good. I'll get off the line and listen to your response. Thank you.
Thank you for your call.
I think what he's referring to, the Essenes, in I believe 1940, they discovered a bunch of scrolls by this community called the Essenes that dated back to literally about 150, 200 AD, and I think that some of them actually went even earlier than that. There's a great book by John Allegro called The Dead Sea Scrolls and the Christian Myth, and he was one that was appointed to look at these newly found scrolls, which are exceptional finds. They were heavily guarded. I mean, the fear of the Vatican and the religious community in general were really trying to, restrict any new information coming out of the New Testament. But he was the only one that started releasing information about these scrolls upon his analysis. There are about 5 of these guys. He was the one that was really trying to get what they had learned off these scrolls out. And the other guys were extremely biased and extremely, well, in his words, they were looking at the monetary value and they refused to release anything for years. In fact, it was about 30 years before this thing finally came out to the public. And what John Allegro discovered, again, his book is called The Dead Sea Scrolls and the Christian Myth, because in his perception, the Christian ideology that the Essenes were practicing was not anything, it was very close to the New Testament, but it was absolutely different as far as Christ was concerned, and the doctrines that are associated with, the general doctrines that are associated with Christianity were not there. And I really highly recommend that book. However, their leader...
Peter, I gotta cut you off here real quick, man. We gotta take a break, but we'll be right back. Stay with us on the line there. All right, so back to my guest, and Peter, I apologize for cutting you off there. It's just, our breaks automatically hit at the top and bottom of the hour.
I understand. Back to the Essenes, which the Dead Sea Scrolls, which were found document, which is this early, basically Christian group, actually pre-Christian in a lot of ways. Their leader took many of the characteristics of Christ, and the caller mentioned that. I don't remember them in my readings referring to him as the Christ. I wouldn't be surprised because Christ literally means the anointed one. It's a general title.
Right.
So I recommend the caller to read John Allegro's The Dead Sea Scrolls and the Christian Myth. It's an excellent read, and it poses a lot of great light on this incredible historical document that was found that essentially has been repressed in many ways. And scholars have, he's been basically the only one. He was fired originally from his position because he refused to go along with the doctrine that essentially he didn't toe the party line, so to speak, like his interpretation of the scroll.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
Back to 9/11, I think we were talking about 9/11.
Right.
There's so many smoking guns on 9/11. I say the World Trade Center 7 because that's the most intuitive to explain to people. Because when people see that, they just, everyone I've ever shown that to, a little question mark goes off in their head.
Now let's get into the Federal Reserve part of your film. I thought that, like I said, that was brilliantly done. Now, what a lot of Americans don't understand is that there's no law that says you have to pay an income tax. They don't realize that the Federal Reserve is actually a private bank. They don't realize that the IRS is actually a criminal organization that enforces something that's not a law. You have that now. I don't know if you're following this situation with Ed and Elaine Brown. Are you following that?
I am.
Okay, you are now.
I am. I'm not as much as some people are, but I've heard the press conference and I've been following it as much as I can. From what I understand, things have not progressed anymore.
Right.
There's still a standoff as far as I understand. And
yeah, we're covering it here on our network, almost constantly. And so, I mean, what is your take on that? I mean, exactly, what is your opinion? It's obvious that they've already been convicted of something that's not a crime. All they're doing is they're trying. It's basically they're making a statement. It's not the fact that they don't want to pay money. They just want to be shown a law that says that they have to. They're standing up. They're making a statement for the rest of the citizens of this country that are being fooled by this system that has been ruling by fear for decades. And, you don't pay your taxes, you're going to jail. Well, that's true. You do go to jail if you don't pay them. But the problem is that people are unlawfully going to jail and are still sitting in prison to this day because of something that's not a law. Give us your take on Ed and Elaine Brown.
I think they should be commended to the highest degree. The courage that they're showing to do this. The picture painted of them, of course, is being, equated to Waco and equated to a number of other, cultish type of environments. They refer to their house compound, as I'm sure you are aware of.
Yes.
What they're doing is setting a precedent, and they're doing a favor for the entire nation. If I could snap my fingers and do something, I would say that everybody, 100,000 people that are in support of this, that understand that the law is wrong, everybody just collect and march right up to that house, march right past authorities, and stand around that house in unity, because that's the kind of thing that needs to happen. The press needs to come into this more so than they have. What they're doing is absolutely phenomenal. It's just sad that the ending is probably not going to be good, and based on the way they speak, they're not going anywhere. At least they're not going anywhere alive from the way they speak of it.
No,
and
they're not.
That's what had to happen. That's really what needs to happen. And it's really sad that the press. Well, it's not. It's nothing surprising, of course.
Right.
But unfortunately, what they're doing is just so brave. They have the money. They've said outright, as you point out. This is not about them being greedy. They're standing up for their rights. And
right.
I've tried to talk to people about this, and everyone is just in such fear of the IRS. The IRS is absolutely fraudulent. It's the only real organization in the country that's outright. You are outright guilty until proven innocent.
Exactly.
And that's completely wrong.
It is wrong.
It's atrocious.
It is wrong, and what it is it turns us into a system of basically puppets because we're going along with this. And I'm not going to sit here and say that I don't pay my taxes, and I'm not going to say that my family doesn't pay ours. I pay them, and for the simple fact that I don't want to go to jail. I don't, and I'm going to sit here and admit to you that I don't have the guts that Ed and Elaine Brown do. I just personally don't. They have more guts than 90% of the people in this country have for doing what they're doing, and they're standing up for what's right. And I think that should be commended. It should be blessed. But of course, the mainstream media does their little job as puppets, demonizing these people, saying that that they're a bunch of killers who are going to kill anything that steps on their property and nonstop, just garbage. And I think it's important, like you said, to spread the word to people about what's really going on there. That house, not compound.
Yeah, right. Exactly. It's a family. It's not. Family that knows their rights. And the funny thing is the ignorance is so widespread. I think even the puppets in the mainstream media, if they really understood that they don't have to pay income taxes, if they really understood that there's no law, that in the actual IRS code, it says it's voluntary.
Right.
Apart from the fact of all the other fraudulent aspects of it in its culmination,
exactly.
They would be on the side of it. Because who wants to pay in 35 to 40% of their income every year to go into the pockets of the bankers for the interest on the fraudulent Federal Reserve?
Exactly. It's
absolutely.
And what absolutely stuns me about this, Peter, is that you have so many Republicans and so many of these, quote, conservatives who don't like taxes to begin with, who want as little tax as possible, but they still think that these people are nuts. I mean, they say, well, we don't want taxes. I mean, taxes are for, that creates a socialist society. Well, show me the law that says that you have to give the government your money. You're giving your government like 30 to 40%, like you said, of your money, and you're not. And where's it going? It's going into the pocket of a private banker. They slap a label on it. For anybody who's seen the film America, Freedom to Fascism, they know this. I mean, it goes right into the pocket of a banker. They slap labels on it. They say, well, this money, how would our highways get paid for? How would our schools get paid for?
Right.
What they don't realize is that property taxes go to pay for education. Highways are not federal owned; they're state owned. So they're all, gas taxes go to pay for these roads. It's local and city, local government and state taxes that go to help pay for these things. And what they want to do, they paint it with a broad brush and say, well, all of your income tax goes to pay for all this federal stuff. These court buildings and all these nice. No, half of these court buildings were built even before the Federal Reserve was created. I mean, prime example today. Who was it? The guy from Fox News was interviewing. I think it might have been yesterday. Was interviewing Ron Paul, and he asked. Neil Cavuto. He says to him, well, if somebody didn't have to pay taxes. Or if people didn't have to pay taxes, then you wouldn't be standing in that nice building that you're standing in right now. And Ron Paul was standing in some government courtroom. And Ron's like, yeah, okay. How do you think the building of this building here was funded? It was built way back before the creation of the Federal Reserve. How do you think it was funded?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Ron Paul, I saw the interview you're speaking of, and he's another one that we really have to commend. This guy, he's unbelievable. I can't believe we even have a candidate that's willing to be this honest. He's absolutely honest. He knows the frauds. He knows all about them. We have to get behind Ron Paul.
Right.
I understand he was banned from the next debate, wasn't he?
Yeah, but I just read an article before I came on the air. I didn't get a chance to print it, but apparently Ron Paul is starting up they're calling it, he's going to crash the debate. He's going to set up his own room in the same building and do his own. I think that's great. I mean, we're in real trouble. And, to sum it up here, I mean, so many people want to focus just on 9/11. I mean, I've got articles here about the immigration bill, which I think is a complete joke. I want to get into that with you. What is your take on this immigration bill?
Well, I'm probably not as familiar with it as you are, but I've been listening to it for a long time. It sounds like an amnesty plan to me, but didn't you shoot down the bill?
Yeah, they shot it down today. There was no vote, or there was a vote on it. They shot it down. The senators voted unanimously not to pass it, and so it's done for now. Ted Kennedy says, "Well, I vow it's going to be back." But the bottom line here is, Peter, is that this thing, if it's signed, it's basically signing our country over to a North American Union. We're basically all screwed. Our Constitution is burned at that point. It's over. It's completely over, Peter. Our Constitution is gone. Canada, Mexico, and the United States will become one, and you're headed in a huge, giant step towards a globalization.
Right, precisely. That's exactly the point I make in my piece, and I'm 100% behind you. Anybody that's aware of the general politics of the Council on Foreign Relations, the fact that they outright won. Or one world government have been saying this for about 60 years. And then you realize that all the major cabinets, or all the major administrations, are full of these guys. Top-tier guys, too. Of course, it's compartmentalized. Not everybody in the Council of Foreign Relations, knows the game plan.
Right.
Thousands of them in there.
Just like the CIA, just like the CIA, the FBI, or not every single individual is not involved in 9/11. Certain black ops that are involved in it, not every single one. But go ahead, finish your point. I'm sorry.
But, the precedent for a one-world government and the merger of economies, as you probably know, I believe it was Foreign Affairs came out fairly recently saying they wanted to merge the dollar with the euro with the yen, which is one step towards the global currency, because those are three major currencies.
Yeah, and
of course, the Amero is going to happen before that.
Right.
So, you just have to read between the lines on this, and then the precedent for one-world government goes back so far. I mean, very old.
Oh, it is.
Hey, are you familiar with Norman Dodd?
Yes, I've heard of him, yes.
Norman Dodd, he was appointed to head the first and only commission to look into tax-free foundations in the 1950s.
Right.
And of course, tax-free foundations are where all the rich elitists hide their money, and they engage in influence of society through the use of these tax-free foundations, such as I'm sure you heard Aaron Russo describe the Rockefeller foundations, and Nick Rockefeller describing the women's liberation movement, how they use that to their advantage by funding it.
Right.
And Nick Rockefeller's logic, so that they could get the other half of the country to pay taxes and get the kids in the institutionalized schools faster. You look at it, it's incredible deviousness. The tax-free foundations have incredible influence, and it looks like what they're doing is very positive and altruistic and for humanity. It's not the case at all. So anyway, Norman Dodd, 1950, started investigating these organizations. He was called up to an office with, I can't remember who the figure was, a very high figure in one of these major foundations. And the man explained to him, and this was 1950, that the goal of their foundation, I can't kind of paraphrase his words, because he says it almost exactly in the interviews with Norman Dodd. It's also that in his books. But essentially, that they're using their tax-free foundation to merge the United States with the Soviet Union.
Yep.
And this is a very, this just shows how old and how long they've been trying to do this. And it's an incredible realization to think that people are really trying to do this. But they're without country. The bankers and the elitists are without country. They don't need any of this. They don't need the United States. People think the United States is the one engaging in a very criminal country. It's not the United States. It's
right.
The people, the bankers that own it, the coup d'etat of 1913, and it's these guys that are pushing forward and trying to fulfill their agenda any way they can.
Yeah,
and they're extremely patient.
All right. Well, Peter, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up because we're almost to the end of the show. But your website right now, as of right now, is zeitgeistmovie.com. And
that's correct.
People can contact you through the website. Any plans of releasing this on a DVD or maybe opening up maybe a more broad of a website? Or what are your future plans from here?
Well, I'm going to produce a DVD for it that I'm basically going to give away. And I'm encouraging people to take it and to duplicate it and just get it out there. Numerous offers for people to translate in different languages. Apart from that, I would definitely like to get this thing in a film festival. And that's
great.
Really try to hit the mainstream somehow.
Yeah.
Apart from that, I would like to start expanding the different sections. We don't need another major, big 9/11 documentary, but
right.
I'm very interested in the religion section, and most importantly, actually, the third part. I want to maybe expand this, this broad structure, this broad scheme into a larger, more detailed work. But that's just kind of rattling around in my brain right now. I'm not sure if I'm going to have time to do that right now. I have a normal day job and everything. So that's my hope, to eventually expand this. But I'm just hoping to get this out to as many people as possible and see some change, man.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we need is change, and the time is now. Well, Peter, thank you so much for joining us on the program, and I'd love to have you on sometime in the future just to talk about your progress and what you've done with the film. The film is Zeitgeist.
Absolutely.
The film is Zeitgeist, and Peter, thanks again for joining us. You have yourself a great night.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you. Have a good night.
All right, you.